So we're sitting here with Yancy. Yancy, you're the one word. I don't even have to say your name. Just one word, Yancy. For people that don't know who you are, I would love for you to, one, explain who you are, but also why do you do what you do?
Oh man,
That
how
was
many
deep.
hours do we have?
We got to go on.
Oh my gosh. Well, in a nutshell, the things that I've been doing for a lot of years now is making music, and specifically making music for kids and families since 2008. That's been my focus. I love worship. I have a passion for worship and love just coming up with things that I can put in the hands of leaders like you guys to go into your classrooms, go into your children's ministries and teach worship, talk about worship, and just lead worship better. And so I do that through songs and curriculum and a book and all sorts of things just to provide you with the tools to make that happen. I kind of know my mission is helping kids fall in love with Jesus one song at a time.
You also love pouring into leaders.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I realize a common thread sometimes through my social media posts. I'm like, I really do feel like a cheerleader of children's ministry leaders. I'm the daughter of a children's pastor. That's what I've grown up in my whole life. That's what I grew up being around, was having a dad that did that. And so I feel the unique privilege that I've literally had like a front row seat to see and hear and know the stories that 8-year-olds turn into 50-plus-year-olds, and become grandparents themselves. And, I have numerous people in my life where it's like I've watched that happen. And so I think because of that, I have a maybe more unique perspective than just a leader that might be watching in this moment, because I can see that it's so much more a long game and it's so much more about their future and where they grow and develop into as men and women of God than it is about just surviving this Sunday or, making VBS happen. Like, you want those experiences to be the best they can be, but at the same time, each of those is just a blink. And so how we steward all of those activities and service and programs to really be formational, to help those people grow to love Jesus is what matters.
Yeah. So obviously, you've been around the game for a while. You've seen the highs, the lows. You've seen the stuff of both ministry kid, but also like in ministry. So I would love for you to just take a couple minutes before we get into the meat of this. Like, you've seen a lot of trends over worship, over leadership. What's been some fun times for you, but what's also maybe been like the times where you realize like, oh yeah, maybe church is messy and we're not talking about it?
Well, I mean, I think the fun times for me, I'm in a point now just because I've been doing kids music long enough that some of that first batch of kids that were preteens, especially when I started doing kids music, they're now all in their like mid-20s, married, having kids of their own. And I mean, even this week at this conference, like I encountered leaders that were like, you used to come to my church, a church I go to every single year. She was like, I was in that and now she's a kids pastor, or somebody that went to Superstar, when I led worship there. And so I'm in this beautiful season where I'm starting to see just the harvest of even the things I got to be a part of in this space. So I would say that's a fun thing, obviously.
But it also is like, we got old.
I'm not going to say that. Clean living.
Yeah.
Clean living. That's what I always say. When people are like, you look young for your age, I'm like, it's clean living. But yeah, I am a pastor's kid. And so there's been some seasons of that were more challenging than others. I think I've had more challenge within that space as an adult than I really even ever did as a kid. And, we walked through something kind of a crazy season at one point. And something I just had to learn in that season is that God is always good, even when his people aren't. Never confuse the two. And, as I was sitting in my own situation where it was just like, this is a hot mess, and like, this is broken. I don't know what to do to fix it. And like being so so aware, I guess, that I couldn't fix it in my own strength. I knew my only hope was to trust Jesus to make something beautiful out of that mess, and He did, and He does. But in that season, I learned God is always good, even when His people aren't. Never confuse the two.
That's good. All right. So I know you're working on something new. I'd love for you just to dive in and start talking maybe umbrella view of it. I'm excited because I know your heart. I know it's hard. So I think we can navigate this conversation a little bit. I'd love for you to explain kind of what you're doing, what you're seeing, the why behind it. And I think we can also probably have a pretty good conversation of like, man, we probably wish somebody would have done this a long time. So now I'm proud you're doing it. So
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, in a nutshell, I'm starting a podcast for PKs and ministry kids, and it's called Stained Glass Kids Podcast with Yancy. And I will say for the last, especially, I know for sure the last 4 years, the last handful of years, I've really been burdened for pastor's kid, and it's just something that I think God's just kind of been highlighting to me of like, even in the last week, I've heard a statement that we've all heard before of like, break my heart for what breaks yours, God, and as I've heard that in the last week, I realized like God's been breaking my heart for an issue that breaks His. That there has been so much dysfunction in that space of PKs and just even staff culture, in some of our churches, that then the ripple effect is that it spills into our kids, when just the staff side of it. And so I've been walking, these last handful of years just kind of aware, knowing that, okay, God, like, you're making me care about this for a reason, like a big question I have is like, why are we not talking about this subject more in conferences, that are about ministry? Like it applies to everyone here that has children, and yet so often it's a subject that we just skip over and don't talk about.
Or even laugh about. Like, I can't tell you how many times, like, oh, your kid you're going to introduce to a teacher, and you're going into teacher introduction for the new year, and they're like, oh, you're a pastor. And you see that look on their face, and like there's this perception that's automatic that, oh, this kid's going to be horrible.
Yeah.
And then nobody's talking about it in the church. Like people are talking about it outside the church, not in the church. And so like you're just met as a pastor, as a leader, and you're like, why are we not talking about it? But I'm not going to talk about it.
Right. So I kind of started this year, honestly, had this random thought, and I thought there should be a podcast where we talk about stuff in church that we don't talk about. It was one of those moments where I thought that's a great idea, but
who's going to do it?
But like, it wouldn't be me.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of, I think I maybe told one friend that I'd had that thought, and she was like, I would listen. And so just kind of kept walking some things out. And then, I'm one of those people, I believe God's in the details.
Yeah.
And even right now in this season, I'm looking back and I'm able to see like, oh, in December this happened. In January this happened. Oh my goodness. In April this happened. Like I had this meeting back in May and just blurted out this random idea that I had in this meeting, and it kind of immediately was like, oh dear God, what did I just say?
Yeah.
And the person I was meeting with, they were just like, I love it. Like I'll support it. Like let's make it happen. And so I went and prayed about it and just kind of have entered this space with some fear and some trembling, because it is hard. But what I'm going to be doing is just interviewing people that have grown up with a parent in ministry. And sometimes that's, I mean, there's obviously broken parts in everybody's story. It's not like any of them are like perfect,
Yeah.
Cinderella stories, but I mean, even the Cinderella story is not perfect,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
There's stuff in those fairy tales, and so there's broken parts to the story. I'm planning to talk to some people that have fully walked away,
Yeah.
and aren't living for Jesus,
Yeah.
and so I'm hoping that these will just be some very honest, conversations, talking about in each of our own stories, like what is that thing
Yeah.
that you've seen and you've been through that we're not talking about? Who are some of the people that have shown up in your life
Yeah.
that made a huge difference
Yeah.
and helping you move forward? And then in some cases, it's asking that question of like, who didn't show up in your
Yeah.
life that you really needed to, like from your perspective now, like what would have been the characteristics
Yeah.
of that person that you really needed to show up? And so I'm hopeful and I'm prayerful that this will be healing for a lot of people, that in many cases people will find their tribe and realize like, oh, there's other people out there that have maybe even walked through something worse than I have.
Yeah.
On the flip side of that, I'm praying some pastors and executive pastors and current church leaders will listen to this as well, to learn from and go, how do we care for our team better?
Yeah.
How do we care for our own kids and families better? And I'm believing that this will allow for a cultural shift
Yeah.
as we move forward to have more people stay in love with Jesus.
Yeah. I think giving someone a voice is interesting. The first time I was ever on a staff where they said, hey, we'll pay for counseling for you. And I'm like, I got nothing to say. But then I went and I realized tears were flowing, words were coming out, and I'm like, I did not know I felt this way. I didn't know I had some PTSD. And then I sit back, and even sitting here now, I'm thinking, I'm just crying, even just sitting here, like, my kids have been burned by the church that I've told them they had a community that loved them, and that community failed them so many times.
Yeah.
And so we always talk about, like, in our house, we can tell each of our kids, so I have 3 boys, 17, 14, and 8. I can tell where they're at spiritually by what they sing in the shower. If my oldest is singing Post Malone or he's singing a worship song, if my middle one is singing a country song or a Christian song,
Yeah.
my 8-year-old right now, we're doing pretty good with just some of your songs.
Yeah.
But I can tell. But
That's a good parenting
But when
tip
they're in
right
that
there.
moment,
like
I don't
it.
know what to do, and
Yeah.
I don't know what to say, so I say nothing because that's what I've been taught in the church world.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good parenting tip right there. Just to, it's hard. I mean, plain and simple. It's like, you sometimes walk through those seasons where, I mean, I'll share a quick part of my story about it. I mean, truthfully, I had 1,000 people at my wedding.
Yeah, yeah,
And fast forward a few years, I could count on one hand how many people were talking to me.
yeah.
And I think when you're in the middle of it and you're doing ministry and you're doing what you're doing in your church for what are the right reasons, it'll mess with your head when all of a sudden you realize like, oh, like I was loving you because I'm supposed to love you and serve you. And like, you're not loving me for the same reasons, like, and that's hard, and I was mid-20s and walking that out. I mean,
Do you think some of that is a misconception that maybe we as leaders think that we can shield our kids from something? Like I would say, like I've been in that boardroom where I was told I didn't have a job and I didn't tell my kids, but they felt it even though I tried to protect them from it. And what that in turn did was gave them like this thought that they weren't important enough, and then it really was the church wasn't important enough, and then it wasn't that oh, I see dad's hurt, so the church hurt, and then they feel that upon themselves. Like we think we're protecting them from something, but what we really did was put a pile on them.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an element to what happens as well that I think will be a common thread in people's stories is just this occupation has so much of your personal life mixed with it, And so especially when someone's in that transition, it's not just that your job changes or it's not just that your address changes, but it's like every part of your life, your entire friend group, your entire mentor group, like whatever, like that all gets shifted and changed. And like I've been processing it and I'm like, honestly, like I don't know. besides maybe a politician's family, maybe like a school superintendent or like principal's family. I don't know that there's that many occupations where the job and that employee's family gets all caught up in the mix and everybody knows
Yeah.
knows their stuff. I'm like, if I think about it related, my insurance agent, I know nothing about his family.
Yeah.
Like I've been in his office like 2 times in like
And you pay
15,
him every
16
month.
years,
Yeah.
There's no part of our relationship that his family would be affected by, aside from me canceling my service, I have no opinion about anything related to his family from our experience.
And
but
you don't judge by how he lives his life. You don't judge if you have insurance or not.
Yeah,
Like,
but all of it is just
Yeah.
so mixed together. And I think even something I'm realizing as I'm starting this process of talking to people and interviewing them is it's like we are so programmed not to talk about it. We have a few one-on-one conversations, definitely not with microphones.
It's like a secret society almost.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And so, like you know from your conversations over the years that people are hurt and they're broken, but not very many people are talking about it. And I will just say this, like my disclaimer, in no way am I planning to be like taking a baseball bat around and swinging it at the church, because I love Jesus and I love the church, and you can't love Jesus and not love his church. The two go hand in hand. He's coming back for his bride, which is the church. And so know that I'm entering this space and these conversations with the greatest delicate care of like, if you have a historical property or like a historic home that's on the historic register or whatever, like you can't just go do whatever you want, and so I'm not having these conversations trying to drag names and places through the mud. I'm having these conversations because I see hurt, brothers and sisters in Christ, and I want to learn from things that they've walked through, and I want us to also hear some hard things from their stories and go, okay, let's all agree that this is not okay, and then let's also continue to walk things out according to the word and make sure that in the future we're taking care of our teammates. We're looking out for their own kids and families as well as our own, and let's change this narrative and change what this looks like for people to be, career church people, because this world needs Jesus.
Well, I think
the greatest testimony would be that you walk through it, you go through some fire, and you keep loving Jesus.
I think it's perfect timing, just as we're at a conference more than a story. We've probably avoided the elephant in the room for a long time. And, it just doesn't affect us as leaders. It's affecting a generation after generation. You're affected, so then your kids are affected. And so, like, you talk about, like, generational PTSD in a lot of ways. Yeah. And so I would love to hear, like, what is something you're super excited about with this project? Because I know there's some excitement there. Then also, what's something maybe you're scared of? And that's vulnerability, I know. I'm sorry, but like, I think you have to say some of that stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I'm excited about it because I'm in the season where I'm able to see just those threads of how God's been like weaving the thread through my story and really preparing me for this. I think when I had an early meeting about it with the guys that are helping me record and produce it, and they were like, yeah, you need to come up in a nutshell of telling them who you are and what you've done as to like how we got to this point. And honestly, it was a very humbling moment when I kind of realized I'm like, okay, every line item I would normally put in my bio of something I've done and accomplished, those are the things that yes are a calling, and yes, I've invested time to study and develop and perfect and whatnot. But the thing I have been since I took my first breath on planet Earth was be a pastor's kid. And even farther back than my own personal relationship with Jesus, I've been a pastor's kid. And so, it was definitely a moment where it's like, oh my goodness, to realize like God's been preparing me all of these years, and even some of the hard stuff that we've walked through, ultimately, how I handled that and how I walked through it has prepared and been the testing to allow me to be the person that gets to sit in the seat and have these conversations. So I would say that's the side I'm excited about. I mean, I think the part that I'm like nervous about, or whatever word you use, I think it's just I want people to understand my heart in it. And I don't like internet feuds. So I'm not excited about the thought of someone wanting to have an internet feud with me because they misinterpret what I'm trying to do.
Well, I think as I sit here and we laugh, like getting your email last week reminded me that I think for you have been in the spotlight for a while. You've stayed away from controversy. You have been truthful to who you are. And so I think you're the perfect person to do this because you're a woman of humility and character. And so I think the naysayers are always going to be there.
Yeah.
But I also think that you have had an influence over generations of music, but generations of leaders that will listen because you've been true to who you are. Why Stained Glass Kids? Why the name?
Well, okay. So, of course, like thinking we were going to do this, it's like start coming up with random ideas. And I at first said Stained Glass Cheers.
Ooh.
Which, they were like, wow, that's like, I forget the word they said, but it was like kind of like, that's very emo.
Yeah,
like emo rock or whatever. I'm like, yeah, it totally is. And then my dad was in the room and he actually even said like Stained Glass Kids. Obviously, we know in culture, stained glass totally represents the church. And so it's kind of layered. Some people are like, oh, that's a layered meaning. Obviously these are kids that grew up in the church. So Stained Glass Kids. But I think if you want to get real deep with it as well, this is about telling the mosaic story of our lives. And just like we saw in Joseph's story, God does take the things that someone else in this world meant for evil, meant to harm us, meant to hurt us, and he turns it around and uses it for something great. And in my own life, I've seen God take the pieces of my life and slowly put them back together to make maybe a different picture than the one that I thought was being made, but it's no less beautiful, and in many ways it's more beautiful.
Yeah.
And so I think within it as well, just that picture of, what some of the stained glass in the world that we've seen, of just these random little color pieces and whatnot. I think that representation within the name as well. So it probably will mean a lot of different things to different people.
I think it means a lot to different people. I mean, I automatically think back to, I was always scared my kids were going to break a stained glass window. Like that was like one of those sacred cows. Like you can throw a baseball anywhere except for where there's a stained glass window. So we're telling them you can throw a baseball anywhere around the church except for that one window. Like it's messed up. I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
All right. So as we close up, I would love, one, we're super excited about this, but two, I know you have a heart for the leader. And so I'd love for you to close with maybe just some insight for a leader from your heart of ministry's tough. You throw in this part of, we've been talking over and over, like not only are we trying to help partner with families to raise their kids, we're having a hard enough time raising our own.
Yeah.
And two, then you get all the pressures from church and leadership and all those things. I would love just whatever's on your heart to speak to a leader today in a time when a lot of people want to quit. What would you say to that leader today?
Yeah. As you're talking, a little story came to my remembrance. So a few years ago, I had led worship at a preteen camp in Texas one summer. And a few months after that week of camp, actually, the morning after I had won my Dove Award the night before, I got a phone call of telling me about a a 10-year-old who had been killed in a car accident with his dad, and they were wanting me to sing at the funeral. And in that moment too, it was like such a life perspective of like, wow, we all are having like mountaintop highs and like the lowest of lows all at the same time, you know, here on this planet Earth. And so they had asked me to sing at Jacob's funeral. He loved Super Wonderful, and we had sang it at camp. But that was a major shifting moment for me, because if I'm honest, as I led worship that week at camp, I wasn't stepping on stage each session thinking like that those kids didn't have their whole life ahead of them. Like, we know that, but I don't even think the church leaders that brought that boy to camp that summer took him to camp thinking like, hey, in October, his time's going to be up. And like hearing this mom just testify of like her son's faith and what he would want his friends to experience, you know, through this funeral and all of this stuff was just like mind blowing. But I know for me, it shifted something for me to take so much more seriously every time I do get to step on a stage. And I would just challenge you leaders with that too. Like, we don't know. Like, this may be their one shot. And so what we do in those minutes that we have them matters. You know, we've got to steward that well. But I think I would just encourage you, you know, remember Jacob and realize that they might have 10 years on planet Earth. They might have 70, you know. But again, it's getting back to that idea, like it's about the long game. And I think it's just a reminder that everything matters. And, you know, something I like to say is the ripple effect of your obedience goes farther than you could ever imagine. And so I would just encourage you today that what you do matters and it's worth it. And don't give up. Be obedient and give God your yes in whatever it is.
Yeah. I think sometimes as kids leaders, you have to look at the big picture, the ripple effect of sometimes in the moment seems miserable, but what you don't realize is you've had a message for years that has went on and on and on, and keep doing what you do. You're called to this. You are for this time. And so, Yancy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being such an influence in this community. And so we love talking about here at Kidzmatter, like, we're not experts at anything. We're learners in everything. And like, we're all just trying to figure this stuff out together. So let's figure out how we help pastors and kids. And so I'm excited to see where this goes. And I think the biggest thing you could say is like, pray for this project.
Yeah.
Pray for this. Pray for you.
Yeah.
Let some stories be told.
Yeah, and I'll give a prayer request too. I need you to pray for people to be willing to share all of their story. Because even early on, I'm getting into this and I'm realizing we're programmed to leave out some details.
Yeah.
But I need people to be willing to share some of the
thing.
worst parts of their story, because I know there's somebody else out there that has the same one, and they need to hear it. And so that's the prayer request right now.
I think it's just a reminder too, like the best way we can share God's stories to share our story. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the good and the bad. Yeah. All right, everybody, thanks for watching the Kidzmatter podcast today. And like I said, we're live at the Kidzmatter conference, and it's lunchtime, and people are going to be getting ready to go back into breakouts. And if you're missing this year, make sure you jump on and get ready for next year, because I promise you it's going to be amazing. We'll see you later here at Kidzmatter.